Sundays have always been sacred to me. It gives me a chance to spend time with my family, with my friends, to focus on my faith. And honestly, We Rest on Sundays is a platform that I've created to help you navigate the complexities of the world. I want to spend time having open, honest dialogue with mentors, friends and family, and individuals that I truly believe are exceptional. We're going to focus on love, career, marriage, parenting, and everything in between. And the primary goal here is for us to become the better versions of ourselves every single day. I want to thank you for tuning in. I'll see you on Sunday.
Awesome. Good?
Couldn't be any better.
All right, Jeff. We'll jump right on in, man. Jeff, I appreciate you being here and serving as a mentor and a friend and somebody that I admire and who's, honestly, career that I really respect. You were a seasoned professional at Delta, Home Depot, now Chick-fil-A. Right. So you've hit almost every single, major corporation here in Atlanta.
Inexplicable.
Yeah, you got it. Right. But you're serving now as a senior director in talent at Chick-fil-A.
Yep.
I've been knowing you now for 6 years. I had an opportunity to come into Chick-fil-A and report directly into you. And I'll get into it a little bit later, but you have continued to just serve as a strong mentor, arguably the strongest mentor that I've had in my career, and really helped me navigate my career. But can you just tell us a little bit more about who Jeff Spratlin is?
Sure, I'll do it. First of all, incredibly honored to spend time with you, Ben. As you know, we stay connected like brothers, and I really admire how you've invested in yourself, but more importantly, how you invested in your family. And that's going to be a lot of what you hear from me today. A lot of encouragement around that, because it's what ultimately will be the measure of who you are. So Jeff Spratlin, I'll start with how you did a nice intro into the companies I've been incredibly blessed to work with. I mean, all I left out in Atlanta were maybe Coca-Cola, a Southern company, and Coca-Cola is awesome Southern company. My dad worked there, so didn't want to follow his footsteps. Jeff Spratlin, how I would want people to think about me, first and foremost, as a child of God. That's been a lifelong journey for me, and there are times maybe I wouldn't be proud of how I acted as a child of God, but it is really who I am. Husband to Paige, 35 years on New Year's Eve. She still, I think, stands in awe of how patient she's been, and I'm just super thankful. I want people to know how deeply I love my children. So I have 4 kids. I now have 3, 2 daughter-in-law and 1 son-in-law, which is new, and I have 4 grandchildren, 1 on the way. So Dad and Pop are the identities that have grown for me over the last several years. So I want people to know that about me, but I also want deeply in the context of work and business that, number one, that I am a person who is for them and will drive them for results, and we'll get there together. I am incredibly blessed to have come into Chick-fil-A about the same time you did, and how God put our lives together really is what I want people to know about me, that I'm intentional about where I am and who I'm spending time with, and having relationships with people like you is really, really important to me. And it's what I want people to know, that like building those relationships, connecting one-on-one, that's really the difference in, I think, enjoying life.
That's good, man. And thank you. I mean, everything you just shared, thank you for continuing to just always lean in and lead me and partner with me. But can you share a little bit more your life specifically? And I don't think that I've shared this with you directly, but not only Chick-fil-A, but really, like, you have probably been the strongest, I think, advocate and person that has allowed me to get even closer with God and in my journey with just like faith and balancing it all, especially during really, really tough seasons. Like COVID was a tough season to have a toddler at home and being a first-time dad. But can you just share more about your walk with God and how that has impacted your life and career?
For sure. I actually was just sharing with another friend last week. We went and had dinner. He's really going through a difficult journey, but he is a man of God, and we were talking about our seasons of life and where we've felt God's presence and when we strayed from God's presence. Let me start with this sort of just basic fact. I don't remember a time in my life where I wasn't aware of God's presence. And what I mean by that is, if the first video that plays in my head, when you say the Lord, the first video that pops in my head is at my grandfather's church, where he was an electrician by day, music minister on the weekends. That's my first thought. I mean, I've known the presence of God my entire life. Now, the seasons that I've been through life, I think really have helped me as I've aged and matured, remember that the waves are coming, and there's a specific piece of advice I want to share when we get into it. But let me start going back to as a young person. As I look at the seasons of life as a young person, when you're a child and you grow into teenage life, what you know is what you know. You just know your experiences. And like you, with the journey that you went on, you knew there was something greater out there. And you started building a trust in something that was going to deliver you there. Sometimes it's trust in our own capabilities, and then it becomes a trust and there's got to be something larger. And as life goes by, you start having big life, like adult life experiences. It starts in college, and then it gets in the professional world. And whether you continue your education, you continue to build your capabilities. But if you know God, you know that there are seasons when you feel drawn to him, and then you may feel actually drawn away from him. The lesson I've learned most specifically over my journey as a husband and father, working at Delta Airlines, working at Home Depot, working at Chick-fil-A, is that God is not the one that moves. God is forever stable and faithful. And when you are separated from God, even in your work and your day-to-day, it's because you've drifted. And what I want to encourage everyone to remember is that God knew that was going to be part of the plan. And when he puts you in positions, whether it's one that you try to help him select or he selects for you, pursuing opportunities that allow you to offer your full expression of your faith is the only sustainable journey that you can count on, regardless of who you're working with. And if I can sort of add in a little bit of context of the big journeys in my life, you know the story. My college years where I had a plan and then I didn't. And because of the injuries that happened in my life, I was completely upside down. The Lord brought Paige into my life, gave me new direction. I just really lucky to land the role I did at Delta Airlines. And our family launched into an incredible journey up until the events of 9/11. And then our life turned completely upside down. But it was also that time, you know that our second daughter came into our life completely unbeknownst to us, that we were going to be parents to another child through adoption. And that began to strengthen not only my understanding of my professional journey, but more deeply how my personal journey and professional journey would begin to weave together, almost to a point when we talk a lot about pulling the threads of life through experiences. Hers was the thread that became I've mentioned a wave of water. All of a sudden it starts to connecting everything I've ever thought and done start to come into focus. And you realize how insignificant your own thoughts are and how significant the thoughts of God are. And that's what guides you through all your career ups and downs, is that he's faithful and strong. We're the ones that in our weakness drift away from the Lord. The most beautiful thing is that you're going to wake up every day and he's going to be right there. And you get a chance to do what you do in the presence of God.
Man, there's so much to unpack there, Jeff, and so many good nuggets that you dropped, right? And that leads me to my next area, because to your point, yes, I've always felt the presence of God, right? Every single day. However, on the back end for me, I have been through a season or two where I have drifted away.
Yeah.
Whether that's poor decisions, whether that's hanging out with the wrong people, whether that's being lazy and just making, not being the best version of who I really could, should, and who I believe that God wants me to be. There are time periods where I know from a character standpoint, you're not leading the way that you should be. So during those seasons where you feel like you may be drifting away from God, what advice would you give to the millennial, Gen Z, et cetera?
Yeah. Well, first, that's I do not diminish the amount of trust it takes just to confess your own journey and then ask for guidance, because that's one of the biggest issues, particularly for people. I would say like you and like your wife and like my wife, Paige, y'all are all just tremendously gifted people. I'm sort of been able to ride everybody's coattails. So I just want to be perfectly honest that I've met just some incredible people in my life, and I've watched them through their journey. And one of the things that continues to resonate with me is, first and foremost, God builds you and gives you the capability to be resilient. In finding your way, and it's because it's different for all of us, right? But finding your way to tap into the resilience that God built in you is so incredibly key as you go through the ups and downs of life. As I watched two really important people, and we start maybe talking about mentorship, you'll hear these names. So one was a gentleman named Richard Ely, who was at Delta Airlines, first African-American executive leader at Delta Airlines, and really powerful force in my life, but so much more of a mentor than he was an executive leader. Don Singletary at Home Depot. And it was Don who said to me that he intentionally builds relationship with people that have had the seasons in life where they can actually admit and share that they've drifted and that they've shown resilience and they've come back, and like surrounding yourself with those people and being intentional about leaning into those people are the way you sustain yourself, even in your most difficult, darkest moments. If you're always with the shining light superstars, you're going to trick yourself into believing that that's what life is supposed to be. And there's nowhere from the beginning of the Old Testament all the way through the end of the New Testament that supports that. That is not the journey that God knows is what we will experience. It will be difficult. There will be seasons of challenge. There will be people that maybe should not be part of your life. Having the discernment to resiliently look inside yourself and really hold yourself accountable. Say, is this the absolute best decision I can make? Is this the best I can do in investing in a relationship? That's how you ride the wave out of the trough into the top. It's that resilience that God gives you.
It's phenomenal to hear that, because I feel like that for me, it's like anytime I'm in a season, right? And that's not just like, where I feel like I'm straying away from God, but like just a season where it's like, this is really, really tough, right? Like for me, it's easy to take my mind back to saying like, this isn't the hardest thing I've dealt with. This isn't like, it'll be fine. Even our kids now, we drop down on our knees and like they're having a moment or they're crying or they're upset about something, and we meet them eye to eye and we're just like, hey, like you can do hard things. Say it with them with soft tone and being kind and caring. And now it's like to see our Tatum, 5-year-old baby girl, and she's just like, I can do hard things, Daddy. I'm like, man, that's the resilience piece where I'm like, if she puts that in her brain right now, because I'm being honest with you, Jeff, like we've created very soft lives for our kids, right? Which is,
We're blessed.
Yeah, and I do get lost in that headspace a little bit, but that's really, really sound advice, Jeff. So I appreciate it. My next question is just what fundamental principles, and values do you think guided you within your life and then within your leadership journey as well?
The first, in being intellectually honest, I always like to write down and then tell you like the very first thing that popped in my mind, because it became such a part of my journey, even though I really didn't understand it till I saw it in practice, was the true definition of servant leadership. And so when you're thinking about impacting people's lives, it was actually the time I got this be in and around the executive leadership at Home Depot, where Frank Blake had taken on the CEO role, and these are his words, very reluctant CEO. You can go read about Frank and listen to Frank talk about that, but he really brought back into focus for the Home Depot leaders what it meant to be a servant leader, and he focused a lot on the inverted pyramid. For whatever reason, it was the first time I'd actually like sketched out, put my name at the bottom of the pyramid and said, I may have the highest title within the group of people, but my job is to equip everybody who serves with me to do the very best that they possibly can. And I may not be remembered for a lot of huge corporate enterprise accomplishments, but what I hope to be remembered by, as I think about post-corporate world, is that I understood the dynamics of serving as a leader and putting that into practice every single day. It really is one of the key attributes that I try to draw on in any moment of anxieties. I'm watching the young people in my life are a couple of generations past year or so. Tatum's 5. My second son, Aaron, just turned 30, 3 kids, practicing law. We laugh about, Dad, did you ever get the Sunday scaries? I'm like, we live for them. We plan for them. You know they're coming. I said, but the one thing you have control over is your Sunday night and your Monday morning, and you have to give that to God. And that's something you have to focus on. And then everybody around you will benefit from that. Your kids will benefit from it. Your spouse will benefit from it. You will benefit from it. And then the people you're responsible for working with and for and around, they'll benefit from it because they'll see somebody really putting themselves in the position of servant leadership and doing everything they can to prepare themselves to serve one another. And that all of a sudden takes you out of the lens and puts everybody you're responsible for back in that lens. And I think that's what makes leadership, I think, the most enjoyable part of as you grow in your career, is being able to influence people that way.
Man, it's I haven't even unpacked this with you, but we'll do it now. I had been in this season, Jeff, the past year, arguably even, I'll be honest with you, the past 4 years, serving in the field in my past role, which you encouraged me to go to,
Yes.
which again, I'm appreciative of. And I'll tell that story briefly because I had the honor and the privilege of really reporting into you and working with you directly for 18 months. And I remember, like, after a year, you were like, hey, you need to be considering going into the business. And I was like, is this a test or am I safe? And, I felt like and you're like, go home, talk to India, see whether or not you'll be able to travel. And then, like, there's some changes that are coming. And I'm like, this dude is either exactly who I think he is, or like, this is a test that I'm going to fail miserably.
Yeah.
Right. And it worked out tremendously because you came back maybe 3 months later, and you're like, hey, they're rechanging the name of this role, but you should consider it. If you get your blessing from your wife, like, think about it, pray about it. I did all those things. I was like, if Jeff is telling me I need to go in this direction, I'm going to go in this direction. So I did. Long story short, serving in the field, serving our owner operators for the past 4 years, you're, servant leadership model. And that's what I think about all the time. I'm here to serve.
Yeah.
I believe that I'm truly, to my core, I believe that God put me on earth to help people solve the complexities of the world. I believe that to my core. That's what this is, right?
Yeah.
And long story short, the however is, we have devotion every Monday at Chick-fil-A. And the past 4 years being in the field, I made the excuse where I'm just like, I don't have time. Like,
We made the mistake of meeting with each other instead of going to devotion.
and
Yeah.
you got it, right? And the however is pivoting out of that role, and it wasn't on the role at all. It was on Ben because we really protect Mondays.
Yeah.
In that environment, I just was making excuses. So I started this year out, and I was like, I go to the first devotion, the first Monday of the new year. I think Paul Trotty was leading it. You were there, and I'm looking around. I'm like, these guys are 3-4 levels ahead of me. If they can make time for devotion, it's impossible for me not to have time for devotion. Impossible. And seeing you show up there, being there, even if you're across the room, for me, I'm like, it's a subtle reminder of be more present, be here. This is what's most important. So I just wanted to share that with you, man, because I think, I get sometimes stuck in this headspace of like, you're not doing enough, you're not adding enough value, and it's like, whoa, like, slow down.
You do an amazing job of competing with yourself. And I'll just, the compliment part of that is, you probably heard, like I did before Tim Tosopoulos retired from Chick-fil-A, really focused on his leadership lessons in life. The one that has most resonated with me was the pursuing excellence, not success. And for a little bit, I have no career regrets. I do regret not meeting meeting people earlier in life. I'd have loved to have known them at a younger period. I would have loved to have been able to be influenced by them. But at just the right moment, when I had come from Home Depot to Chick-fil-A, I heard Tim teach that class, and it has become a center point of who I try to be. I've been doing it for a while, but I can still get better, and I can still be a positive influence. I can still be a servant leader to anybody I come in contact with, anybody that I'm around, including you. But it all starts with, am I holding myself accountable? Am I actually making the effort to be in that auditorium for devotion on Monday morning? Because no matter how hard Monday's going to be, look what we get to do. We get to actually worship the Lord before we have one meeting, before we take one phone call, before we send one email, read a text. Our choice is we're giving you this platform. And so I think it's really critical throughout all of these conversation journey that the authentic you show up, and the authentic person that's inside of you, that's a man trying to seek his way with the Lord and in this world. And it's a long journey, but man, every day is an opportunity.
Yeah, it's good, Jeff. What challenges have you faced balancing career, family, and really just like all the things that come with it, right?
all of them.
Yeah.
So let me. I start with as we were kind of talking through some main points we really wanted to share with each other. I spent a lot of time reflecting on the seasons we talked about going through life when work-life balance was really hard, and I'll break it up into a couple of parts of history. When we were young and the kids were either on the way or they were young, it felt like the challenge was just, do I have the strength and energy just to do the things I need to do every day? So I'm getting up earlier. I'm doing more before the sunrise than I ever thought would be required of me. I'm working harder. I'm coming home. I'm helping Paige with the kids, and then I'm doing work in the evening, and then I'm starting that over, and it just goes over and over and over, and the days start to just last forever. You're like, this is never going to change. This is all I'm going to do for the rest of my career. And then there's a season that comes where you almost naturally find and build a balance. What you probably don't realize is you've gotten much more disciplined and much better about caring for yourself, caring for others, focusing on what's important. And you're still working to do the work right. You still want to achieve it in the job. You still want to perform. And there's nothing wrong with outperforming. Like do the things you do that bring success in your career. But then the challenges get a little bigger and a little more expensive and a little more urgent to think about. Like, this next decision could have an impact on my spouse and I, my kids. It could have a much broader impact if I'm able to do this, if I can get that next job, if I can get the next promotion. And you're constantly, am I going to focus on that? And I also need to make it to swim practice. I need to make it to football practice. I need to make it to baseball practice. Like, all these things that fill up your life are just constantly competing. I've never known anybody that did it perfectly. What I have met is a lot of people that get really, really comfortable for what work-life balance means for them. And if Paige were here today, I think she would agree with this. It all started with Paige and I understanding together where we needed to invest our time and energy. Paige, if any of you ever get a chance to meet Paige, what should resonate with you is that there was never a moment in my so I've been doing this for 30 plus years. Not one time did I ever feel like I didn't have Paige's unequivocal support for doing what I was doing. Now, that was me. We were talking about it early. We were doing a good job of trying to plan and communicate. But we built what we built together. And even if it went being gone for 10 days on a trip, or being gone one day on a trip, or being late from one meeting, it's hard. We've had our moments. We've had a lot of them. But at the end of the day, we were aligned with what the outcome we were pursuing. We were doing it together, and we worked together to build the right work-life balance. And if you're doing that, you'll make your way through those seasons stronger than ever. But it takes a dedicated, committed communication platform to do that.
Yeah, it's really, really good, Jeff. And if you can just share more about like the benefits of having a strong partner in a marriage, right? And like what that does to your career, your faith, your family. I think that's a really important piece because, 36 right now, and I have a group of friends that are married, but I got a bunch of friends that are not married, right? And I know the value that it has added to my life. And yes, it is challenging. I'm married to a demanding woman, but I'm also a demanding man at the same time. So sometimes it's fire.
Right.
And we'll be in that tension moment it's not long. We'll be there for 30 minutes, hour max, and then we'll come off of it and we'll communicate effectively and we'll get back to like being who we are. So can you just speak more about like the beauty of marriage, the challenges of marriage, but like why you think marriage and a true partnership is relevant and important in life?
Yeah. Well, if I can, I have to be true to myself and admit that my bias comes from, the biblical word of why we even exist. And part of the why for us existing it is the foundation to bring glory to God. But God, in building that plan, created man and woman. So he designed us to be in partnerships. There was, I don't recall anywhere and there's a few examples of people that were individual contributors flying solo, but they're very, very specific, unique. When he talks about the journey of man and woman, he talks about them being together and that you are actually bringing glory to God together. And I've always found that to be incredibly compelling to me, that I can feel that connection to something God, like not just ordained, but he created that. And so like the chance to participate in that means there's some other glory that he's going to reveal through it. So that's sort of my bias that I'll start with. When I look at the people that I have had the incredible pleasure of serving with, either working for them, working alongside them, or leading them, I always almost exclusively think about the couple of who they are. And that includes even people in my family, people outside of my family, friends, coworkers. Probably the most lasting example for me was actually my grandparents. My grandfather, self-made, from dirt farmer up to colonel in the U.S. Army, and served for 38 years, 3 wars, World War II, Korea, Vietnam. And the most important person in his life was his wife. And you're talking about somebody that would have to get on a boat or an airplane and be gone when there was no such thing as the internet. There's no such thing as cell phone. Radios barely worked across the globe back then. And so their relationship was completely dependent on the written word. And the fact that I was able to share, they shared with me a very, very select grouping of those letters that they shared with one another, not just for each other, but to my mom and to my uncle and to other members of the family, reflect their understanding that doing this together is the only thing that makes it worthwhile. Not that life can't be full. Flying solo, that's not how we were designed. God built us to flourish in relationships, and he actually created the man and woman relationship to specifically reflect how he loves us. And we can dive into that as much as you want. But to me, as I look back, what's going to matter most is that Paige and I got to experience this together, and we have the closest friendship we could have ever imagined, and it's with one another. And that's what God designed.
Yeah. Man, it's powerful because, I think for us as well, it's Indy and I, we work at being friends, right? Like, it's not just husband and wife. Like, it's like, no. We have to remember those college days of like having fun and being jovial and all of the things. I think right now we're in a season with like millennial parents, at least what I feel sometimes. I'll be honest with you, prime example. Yesterday we're hanging out with friends. We went to a kid's birthday party. So it's a lot of friends our age and like their kids around, which is great. And the topic came up where they're like, hey, a lot of our friends were like, hey, you and India do a really good job of still hanging out and like enjoying each other's company.
Right.
We set a discipline, we've agreed, where it's basically like every Saturday, 3 p.m., sitters coming over. We don't necessarily have a plan or dinner or reservation or anything like that, but we know we're going to do something together
Right.
that's away from the kids for a little bit. And that is a practice that we have set in our house that has given us, honestly, I feel like that has allowed our marriage to remain super healthy,
Right.
allows us to stay super connected. Because at some point, like, these kids are going to, especially the way that we're raising them, I believe they're going to turn 18 and they're going to go to college and they're not going
Right.
to look back and
Right.
come live with us again. And I need to be connected and married to her.
Yeah, I will say I look at younger generations like yourself. I feel like what, if anything, you've learned is how intentional you have to be about that. And I say all that with full confession that Paige and I, particularly, I'll just take responsibility for this. I did not keep it as top of mind as I wish I had. Now, the good news is, as the day of empty nesting loomed more imminent, Paige did a really awesome job of just starting the conversation, which is, we are about to be solo. It's just the two of us. What have we done to like invest in that future? I'll say that we found our way, and I can tell you the trip that was intentionally designed to help us like start building that back was very, very little details. Just buy the plane tickets, rent a car, and figure it out. And it was at the end of that trip, we said, we can do this.
Yeah.
We really are, to your point, we are best friends first and foremost. We just happen to still be in love. At least I still love Paige. And depending on how this goes, she may or not. I know she loves me, but she still is such a great friend in reminding me that maybe not everybody sees things exactly the way you do, Jeff. And so be a little more kind and patient with each other. But it started with we didn't do it perfectly, but we did make a commitment to one another that we're gonna do this for the rest of our lives together.
Yeah.
And we've just been blessed to be able to do that.
Yeah, it's good. Thanks for sharing that, Jeff.
Yeah.
Can we step into mentorship a little
Yeah.
bit? And what I'm really looking to get from you is just advice on one, like how to gain a strong mentorship, and then also like any advice on like how mentees should be showing up
Yeah.
and spending time with their mentors. And again, like I think for me, I've had the privilege to really draw and gain from your experience, your wisdom over the past 6 years. And I know that it's something that's going to be there for the rest of my life or the rest of your life. But I don't know how to put words behind it of like how we even like fully got
How'd we do that?
Yeah. So
I've actually, just you and I talking about our last 6-year journey has actually helped me really dive into analyzing what has worked and why it's worked, and then be able to reflect back on what worked for me and then what didn't work for me. I now see where a mentoring relationship I had was probably not as beneficial as it could have been because I didn't apply the principles that you and I have tried to really focus on. And I wrote down 3 that I kept coming back to these 3 things. First of all, a very, very strong any relationship, but particularly a mentoring to mentee relationship, has to be mutual. So if it is a one-way street, that you might as well just pay for a class and go get your certificate or degree, whatever that is. That's teaching, right?
Yep.
That's sharing knowledge. Here's the test. Have a great day. When it's mutual, there is a compelling reason to continue to invest in one another. And I think that is the key attribute that we've had together, that you've helped me be better at what I do. And I've been able to, in turn, help you achieve some of the goals you want to achieve. The second one is personal. If it's not something that feels really connected to you in your spirit and your personality, so like if it's a struggle and a strain,
Yeah.
I mean, it could be the CEO. I mean, it could be anybody, but if it's not, if it's just like we just don't click, then again, it's not going to be a true mentor-mentee relationship. And then finally, is there any way to measure it? Is it measurable? Is the relationship actually something that I can see a beginning, a middle, and an end, and I can see what toll gates I went through to get there? And that's where I would say for you and I, it's been measurable, because for me personally, I felt that you've helped me focus on things that are really impactful for people. Like you've given me feedback. Hey, I really need to talk about this specifically, and I need to do it in a timely manner. And I mean, we know now when the text comes twice, I know you're serious, but we built that because it's measurable, it's personal, it's mutual, it's personal, but it's also, it means it's measurable, because you can look back and say, we helped each other be better because of the time. So I think as you're thinking about building those relationships, those are 3 lenses you can put into practice for choosing a mentor or mentee.
It's really good. And I love the fact that you brought up, because I was just unpacking this with a peer of mine, with a fraternity brother of mine, where he's asked me, he's like, hey, like, you do a really good job of like staying in touch with people, following up, and like building on these mentorship relationships. He's really just like, what's the how? And I was like, man, I don't take any of these things personal. And what I mean by that is, I know how busy your schedule is. I know what I have a peek behind all of the things that you're navigating.
Yeah, you've lived it with me. You've seen it.
Because you share. So for me, I have to be a student of Jeff Spratlin as well. If I'm going to ask you to mentor me, to your point, it has to be mutually beneficial, right? So for me is, I need to make sure, and you'll probably challenge me on this, but for me, I'm always thinking in I got 3 to 5 bullet points, right? So if I have 7 minutes with him, what are
These are the 2, 3. Yeah.
These are the 2 or the 3.
Yeah. We should probably take our text string, take out the confidential stuff, and say, this is what's worked for us. Now, I mean, it probably won't work for everybody.
Yeah.
I wouldn't. So as people start really thinking about, okay, but I like, is it time for me to do that? How do I put it into practice? I think number one is you're never pushy. I mean, I never felt like you were pushy, but you're never timid. Like, I don't ever have to wonder, does Ben want to really talk? Like, is he just blowing off steam, or does he really need a moment? And that is where I think you've done a great job of balancing, understanding where I'm coming from, and helping me understand what's most important to you. And that turns around and makes it incredibly personal for me to be able to contribute. Because then I feel like, if it's only for just a very small moment, a snippet of time, I've helped you be a better Ben. And then that means, as I've said to you, you got to be a better dad. You got to be a better husband, a better son-in-law. Like, those are the things that are just so critical for measuring your success, is focus on those things. That applies to mentoring relationships as well.
Yeah, it's good. How should mentees be preparing, prior to spending time or asking for time from a mentor specifically?
Yeah. I think, first of all, very beginning, make sure that you have an alignment with your mentor about what is most influential and what is most critical to the conversation from their perspective. They may be going into it with a very broad sense of, I'm here to help. They may have a sense of, hey, there's some specific things that I share with, or that I do with all the mentees. Finding where you're connected and why you're connected is really, really important. Like, you've got to spend the time, like, getting to know the person, doing whatever available research on that person, even if it's just finding them on LinkedIn, or asking a coworker, hey, do you know anything about them? Like, investing a little bit of time so that you don't come in, it's not a blind date, right? You're just walking in and like, good to see you, good to see you. No, you need to invest the time so that there's personal fulfillment for both of you. I think there's also the responsibility of the mentee to listen and react to what's going on in that mentor's life. I had a very unique experience later in my career, actually, than I'd ever thought I'd be blessed to have such a great mentor. And this person was open enough with me to share that she had a really, really difficult family situation going on. And it was quite contemporary with things that were going on in my life. As you begin to see where you need to lean in for caring for your parents, and your children. So you become the sandwich generation of caring. And we were able to like really lean in, and I was able to offer her at least prayerful support and encouragement. And it got a little bit deeper, and realizing of all the things she had going on in her life. And she was a really, really impactful role. She was not able to focus on her job because of what was going on in her family. And me just being prepared and open our aperture and having had those conversations allowed me to be a little more of a confidant and a mentor in that conversation, rather than the mentee just saying, "Hey, tell me how you're dealing with this." And she goes, "I really could use a kind thought or encouragement to get through this next week or two." And it just blew me away. But it solidified the idea of going back to the idea that it needs to be personal. And needs to be mutual benefit out of it. And then it's not just mentor-mentee, it's like strong bonds of kinship that you can build.
You hit it on the head, right? So as much as I'm saying, like, yeah, I need to come prepared, blah, 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 but it's like, no, it's the listening and like really understanding what season is your mentor in right now, right? Like, and honestly, sometimes that may make me make the adjustment on the fly,
right?
Depending on wherever Jeff may be right now.
Yeah.
Oh, my stuff is, we can talk about this next week.
Yeah.
You know, like whatever it may be. And like, I think reading the room, right? Like,
that's a great encouragement. I'll share with you of the people I've mentioned before, knowing in this one particular person's life that they were seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, like the end of their time in their leadership role was by design coming to its close. And there were times when you could see a lack of comfort, which reminded me that we're all human, right? Even those that had the highest level of worldly support come to these times where you're like, have I done everything I needed to do? Have I really accomplished what I was meant to be? What happens if I leave and it didn't matter? All those are that's just the forces of evil, like making you doubt yourself. But I watched just a little bit of this happen and realized that it was my turn to lean in and say, what's bothering you? What's worrying you? We've been doing this a long time. Yeah. I know something is bothering you. What's different? And we talked, let me rephrase that. He talked, I listened more than I ever thought I'd get a chance to. And it became our entry into the next phase of our life and mentorship. I still look back and that is one of the most treasured gifts he ever gave me, was just pure honesty, clarity about what he was struggling with. And it continues to resonate with me and shape me today.
Man, I was going to ask you, and you kind of hit on it there, but if there's anything else that you left out, if you could take us through, one of your more, like a strong aspect or season to your life when you were mentored by someone.
Yep.
What did that look like?
I'll give you, let me just give a little bit of two, because they're very similar in the way I think back about the impact they had on my life. Because in the moment, in the season of my life that I was in, they really were an anchor for me for the period, for a very specific reason. For one of them was when Richard was helping me find really my footing in what did I really want HR to be a career. And at the time I was still very open and potentially pursuing operational leadership roles, and felt like I had capability and skill to do that. Richard encouraged me to think deeply about the impact we have had in our career, and I continue to have in HR, is that being able to deeply impact people on a very personal level with decisions they're going to make today that could impact the rest of their careers. Richard was uniquely gifted at listening to people, and he taught me in person the value of letting people just say what they need to say and watch it. So when he was mentoring me, he allowed me to see himself in practice. He allowed me to be part of some really difficult conversations that just tested your patience and ability to listen. But then as that person got through, and Richard would say, after about 500 words, you're going to know what's really bothering them. It helps you get to the root cause. He taught me that personally by demonstrating it and inviting me into those difficult conversations appropriately. I mean, I was in the right role for that, but Richard made it impactful and personal because it impacted my career for the next 25 years. So that was one. The next one was when I spent time with Don at Home Depot. Don became a champion and a mentor first for over a year. And then I went to work for Don. And like, what you think, that's a golden opportunity. And I thought, well, I'm afraid something might change here. Now that he's my people leader, is it going to change? He actually put it in another gear, took it to another level. And this is how you know it's really personal. He noticed that I had a certain, in my bag, I carried this men's devotional with me. He went and bought the same devotional without me knowing it, started reading it, and would walk into my office and just start talking about whatever happened to be in the devotional. And then I finally caught him like, this is not coincidence. And then we started sharing more deeply. And then it started finding its way into our conversations. It's the most powerful thing. In the moment, you don't realize how powerful this is. I'm preparing to go with Don to do fairly significant presentation to executive committee at the company. And the only advice Don gave me was, listen, you know this is going to be a challenge. Don't be defensive. And do you know what I responded? I'm not defensive.
Yeah.
He goes, told you. And so, but because, that wasn't because he had been my people leader, it's because he had been my mentor, my friend, and knew, he had no question about my ability, no question about my preparation. He knew deeply within me the one thing I needed to hear was it's going to be hard and not be defensive. And he immediately drew it out of me. Now that is an impactful mentor who knows in the moment what you need to hear. And that's, I still to this day, I can see that exact conversation in my mind. Know where he was standing in the hallway, leaned in the door, made the comment, the look on his face, the slight smile that he left me with. One of the most impactful moments in over 30 years of working, all because we started as friends and mentors, and then it grew even more when I had a chance to work for him. And then when I went and did other things, he still was the first guy on speed dial.
Yeah. Yep. That's powerful, Jeff. So thanks for sharing that, because I think even with, when I think about my life, my career, again, I briefly hit on the part where I was like, is this a test? And I look back at that moment where literally we're having a conversation in a small little office and you're encouraging me to, like, you're not telling me what to do. You're saying like, hey, I think you should consider it. And I'm like, why is he, I went, you know me, I'm in my head for an hour, like, what is this about? I'm texting India rapidly and go home and pack it. And boy, is that what I needed in that season of my life, right? Like,
well, Ben, let's like a little just positive feedback for you. You were brave enough to like open up your spirit and your soul to me, not just Ben and Jeff working together in this team at Chick-fil-A, but really Ben Collier, the young person and your college journey and the young husband and father. Like, you shared all that with me. And so it made it much clearer for me how to help lean in and support. So for all those working on relationships, it helps to know one another very deeply. It is the key essence of relationships.
Yeah, it's good. So what advice would you give to those, millennial Gen Z that feel stuck in their careers?
Wow. So first of all, you're not unique when you're stuck in your career. Whether people see it and want to believe it, admit it, everybody has moments and seasons of their career where you're like, I'm not sure this is what I'm supposed to be doing, or I don't think they recognize the value that I'm bringing. I don't think they could hire somebody to do what I'm doing. So all those are flowing naturally because they happen to all of us. So number one, realize it is part of the journey. It's not unique to you. Everybody goes through it. That's number one. Number two is you cannot work yourself out of that. In other words, working harder and putting in more hours striving for more accomplishments and measurements and successes, that's not going to get you there. What's going to get you there is the trusted relationships that help you understand that these are all what's the incredible thing about seasons is they all come and go.
Yep.
They all turn. And so when they turn, and whether it's 6 weeks from now or whether it's 6 months from now, when it turns, you want to be ready for the turn. It might surprise every once in a while. It just, you catch lightning in a bottle and it happens. But it's going to happen. And the more you think about why it's not happening, the more likely it is you'll miss it the first time around. In the future, there was years ago, I had an opportunity to do some different things that I did not realize it was time for me to go do those. And so I'm like the people of Israel when they get out in the wilderness, and I just kept wandering around for years when I had an early out, right? I mean, the signs were there early how I could make it, but I didn't read them well and I didn't react to them well. I didn't have, at the time, I'd abandoned sort of the practice of really going to my strong mentor and saying, I'm wrestling this. And then when I did, his reaction was so perfect. He said, you're asking me just to be nice, right? You already know the answer to this. Like that's a true mentor and friend. Know those seasons are going to come and go. Just be dutiful and make sure that you're focusing on the things that build those up around you and that grow your capabilities. The season will come.
Yeah, it's good. Really good. How has a few more questions for you. How has being a father and a grandfather really changed your outlook on life?
Wow. One, it is, I have to share just a thought that has kind of evolved as my grandchildren have come into this world. So because I can't quit talking about them. Oftentimes, when Vanessa was born to Aaron and Casey, and then right after that, Julia was born to Ellis and Gina, it became apparent to me that I did not understand the depth of love that we were capable of. And it's not that I love my kids any less. I just didn't know there was another level. And when I discovered that other level, it's taught me how to just don't turn a blind eye to the joys of what that journey can look like. And it has made me, for the specific thing that's different, I think that has grown in me, is the how to treasure a single moment of laying on the ground, kind of face to face with your granddaughter, stacking blocks up. It sounds incredibly boring and simple and not really dramatic, but just the picture my wife took of me and Vanessa on the floor doing that might be one of the most revealing moments in my life. She said, Paige said, look at that picture, Jeff. You don't have a single marker of anxiety or stress on your entire face. Like your eyes, your smile, your forehead, you don't have the vein. You're not making the Jeff look. Look at you. And why is that? Because you are completely in the moment. So teaching me that moment it's a treasure that cannot be replicated. I'll close that thought with this. My grandfather was really quick to point this out to me, a lesson he had heard and learned and tried to put in practice in his life, because he would leave and be gone in World War II. He was in the Pacific and then Korea and then Vietnam. And he said, remember, Jeff, the lesson that the days that you spend are going to last. They're going to feel like they last forever. The years are going to fly by. My grandfather passed away at 100. He was over 100 years old. We'd lost my grandmother 3 years before that. And I think he literally had reached his goal. And he said, I just don't want to do this anymore. And with no regrets, no sadness, he passed on into eternity. But look at that full life he had lived. And he said, Jeff, I cannot believe that the 15-year-old I was, borrowing my uncle's car, driving out of North Georgia to go on my life adventure. And now I'm at 100 years old, and I can't tell you what happened to the time.
Wow.
That's what, when you become a parent and then you become a grandparent, you realize just how precious every moment is, and you start to realize how much energy we waste on the moments that don't matter.
Man, did you hit that on the head, Jeff?
Yeah.
Man, and
I hope I can be accountable to that every day, but it is really the most impactful. The essence of being a grandparent has hit me like that.
Man, it's and like I'm not a grandparent yet, but like that's how I feel during the season of life with our two little ones at home, where I'm like, man, like all this career stuff, all this noise over here, all the family challenges that come up, blah blah blah. Like, and I'm not saying India and my kid, I'm saying like all the other family stuff that come up.
Oh yeah.
The minute that I get home, and if we are just fully engaged and present with these kids, boy, does it disarm me.
Yeah.
It disarms me. It makes me feel like everything is worth it. It reminds me of like patience, slowing down. You're safe. You're fine. And like, because all they want is like, they're just pure joy.
Yeah. Your kids, and I'll say this because Aaron made this comment to me in the not too distant past. He was absorbing just the enormity of responsibility from every lens that he's seeing life right now. So from marriage, parenthood, work, all of that. And as we were talking about what he remembered of me, of like the examples I set for him, he actually shared one that wasn't super positive, but it was very constructive for me. And he said, Dad, remember this season of your life? He goes, I understand. I have a deeper appreciation now for what you must have been going through. He goes, and I can tell you how happy I am that you're on the other side of that. So they will remember the hard times. They will keep those tucked away somewhere, and they'll either be an opportunity to celebrate that you made it through together, or they'll say that's when we really started
To go
seeing a
south.
fracture in our lives. And I'm blessed that the children that we've remained close as a close family over the years have been able to see growth for Paige and I, that we'll be able to work through those things and come out the other side and be ready to go enjoy the next 35 years.
Yep, it's good. Two more quick questions for you. One, just looking back, what are the top lessons that you feel like you've learned on your journey that you hope that others will take to heart?
Well, the intentionality, I think I was able to share sort of a life experience I had with a group of folks we work with. They just invited me over the holidays to kind of come and share. We had done some mission work with a coworker at Chick-fil-A, and that kind of led to other conversations. And when somebody invites you to come and share your testimony of your life, you got, like, I got to really be thoughtful about this. But what it did remind me is that a lesson that I have learned and I carry deeply with me is remember that God is very, very intentional and personally involved in your life. And that is a lot different than saying, I believe in a God.
Right.
The God that we worship is the God, and he is personally involved in every aspect of your life to the level that you invite him to be. Remember, he's not the one that moves. You're the one that moves away. And so if you want to really put the pieces of the puzzle together, you got to get closer to God and seek his guidance. I can give personal testimony. I believe in the absolute deepest fibers of my life, where I can see the intentionality of God direct the steps of the person that will become my wife, the people that will become my children, and the daughter that will join our family from Ethiopia. It does not happen without God's direct guidance in our lives. And when he gave us the strength to say yes, when we were called upon to say yes, that was God revealing his glory for a very short amount of time in our life. And I would say that that lesson has got to be deeply embedded into who you are, or all of this will be just like anybody else's journey. It'll just be another journey. It needs to be deeply embedded in your walk with God. So he's a very personal God. So that's number one. Number two is that you will, without question, you will have bumps in the road. That Like nobody gets away from that. Nobody. And when those bumps come, the conversations you're having today with your wife, with your family, with your friends will help dictate how you overcome those bumps. And the more you can prepare by prayerful dedication, Bible study, mentorships, friendships, partnerships, those things will prepare you for the future. The mechanism that is the Spratlin household, I'd say the key ingredients is that Paige and I, from a very, very early age, learn to lean in and love one another for who we are, and then build from there. Paige never asked me to reinvent myself. She just encouraged me to let the best parts shine, and she gave me the opportunity to do the same for her. And I hope what she'd be honored with would be able to tell her story, would say that we worked really hard to let the very best of each other shine, and be each other's number one support mechanism.
Yeah, that's great, man. You just hit on, I think aspects of my marriage and our household that I think that's the beauty and the magic behind what we're doing is exactly what you just shared. Like India doesn't try to force me to be something that I'm not. Like she allows me the space and the grace to lean in. And
even when it's uncomfortable.
You got it.
Right.
You got it, man.
Yeah.
And that's why for me it's easy to be married, right?
Yeah.
It's easy when I make a misstep, or if I'm like, I know, like I'm a Enneagram 2, so relationships are very, very
Right.
important to me, right? But the however is people like me, we're typically, we like being givers, right? Like being
Yeah.
givers. But then when you have that moment where you're like, I'm exhausted, I'm tired of giving, and then something's challenging you, you're like,
Yeah.
we're not doing that, or we're being short on something.
Yeah.
She's the one person in my life that thoroughly understands me, right? Where it's like, you're just tired, like you need a second, give me 5 minutes, and I come back and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Like I didn't mean to come off like that or whatever. So hearing you share that is very, very, very helpful. My last question for you, for millennials, Gen Z, really the generations that are coming behind you, is there one piece of advice that you would want to leave us with?
Yeah. Gosh, that's an awfully nice invitation. If I'll start with, let me just put a foundation in place. If you don't have a core purpose, meaning if you're not anchored in what we describe as our faith, some of this, it may not resonate with you. So I'm going to speak from there, is that I was blessed to be introduced to God at an early age. And no matter how far I've ventured away, He's welcomed me back. And so from that foundation, I would, probably the key advice I'll give everybody is find your resilience with your person. And again, it may not be the marriage like what we have and the experience we have today, but when you find your person, and that person is as dedicated to you as you could possibly imagine, and they're willing to be your truth teller, and they're willing to let you be your very best, and encourage you to grow in your strengths and acknowledge your weaknesses, that will build the resilience in you to keep going and going and going. And the climb, the destination is really not the point. As we've laughed about before, there's always nicer watches, there's always more expensive cars, there's always bigger houses. There's only one you. There's only one India. And how you invest in one another and how you find your resilience to continue doing that, that'll be the measure of your joy in life. And that will be what those around you remember the most.
Man, Jeff, I appreciate your time. I appreciate
you, Ben.
your guidance, your mentorship, your friendship, your brotherhood. It has been just a gift for me and my family. I think even for my peers and frat brothers, I'm like, man, I had this amazing conversation with Jeff. He shared, people that have
now they get
before.
to see him in person.
Right.
So I'll happy to explain any other stuff if I need to along the way.
Yeah, no, man. So I'm grateful for you, and thank you for allowing me to show up as my authentic self.
Yeah.
And accepting me, right? Like my faults, my imperfections. I think, in the aspects of me that are value add as well. But I need it. So again, I will be sure to continue to take care of our relationship and the bond that we have. But thank you. Thanks for the time.
Same.
Awesome, man.
Love you.
Love you too.
Appreciate you. Thank you.
Yeah, man. Thank you. How'd it feel?
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Told you, man. I'm telling you, Jeff. It's
Yeah,
see.
I see. I wonder if people, well, I encourage you this way. It's going to continue to draw out in you, like they're truly authentic Ben. You just happen to be really gifted at doing business stuff. But how you, like you said, your purpose in life is to connect paths for everybody to be lifted up. Like you can't, once you've put it out there, now God's going to expect you to honor it. So this is a really impressive way of doing that.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Jeff.
Yeah, man.
And that's what I feel to my core, man. And I think that, I think that I have an opportunity to do something special, at the end of the day, and help serve, man. Because I feel it, and I'm sure you've probably been in that season at some point where it's like I have a lot of people around me like that are special.
Yeah.